In this lecture, we'll take a look at how we can use arrays as parameters for our methods. We'll also introduce two-dimensional arrays. Let's suppose we create a method called largest. And the purpose of this method is we want to determine the largest of two different numbers. So how do we go about creating at least the header of that method? So think about it for just a second. If you need to pause, go ahead and pause. It should be pretty straightforward. We can say something like public static double largest, and then we can pass double x and double y. We can just simply return whichever value is the larger of the two. This doesn't seem to be very difficult, right? And if we wanted to get the largest among more numbers, we can use overloading to take care of that. So we can get the largest of 3 numbers, 4 numbers, and so forth. So we can say something like public static double largest, and we can have x, y, and z. We can do 4 of them. So we can do public static double largest, double x, double y, double z, double u. So we can keep overloading our method and put in however many numbers we want to get the largest of. So there is a problem with this approach. And the problem is that every single time we want to create a new method, we have to write a definition. So if I wanted to get the largest of 10 different numbers, I'm going to have to overload the method, write my header, and then write some code to define it. And then if I want to do 11, 12, 13, 14, so forth, I have to create a separate method for each one. It's doable, but it seems very redundant and unnecessary. The solution is we can simplify it by using what we call a variable length parameter list. And the syntax for that is pretty straightforward. We just simply have our data type, we have an ellipsis or 3 dots, and then the name of the parameter, and that's our list. Here's an example of having a variable length parameter list. So we can just have double and then 3 dots and then numList. In this case, numList is basically an array of type double. And then the number of elements in the list depends on how many arguments are actually passed to numList. So for example, if the method passes 6 numbers in the list, then the size of numList is going to be 6. So the size of our array here is going to depend on how many values we actually pass when we call the method. Here's a complete definition of our largest method that uses the variable length parameter list. So notice that where we have our parameter for our method, we now have double with the ellipsis and then the list. And then the rest of it's pretty straightforward. So we initialize some max variable, and as long as the length of our list is not 0, so we got to make sure there's actually something in the list, we'll initialize our max to the first element of our array, and then for the remaining elements, we'll just check to see if the next one we're looking at is larger than the current max. And if so, then we update what our max is, and at the end, we just return max. We include a case where if there is nothing in the array, then we'll just return 0. We have to return something at this line. Otherwise, you're going to get a compile error saying that you have a method that in one case does not return anything. So we do need this line to say return something. But the whole point here is instead of having to create a separate parameter for each number in our list that we want to check, we can just have one parameter that would be a list of all the numbers that we would end up passing. So what this does is now we can call largest with any number of parameters and arguments that we want. So here's some different examples of some method calls. So I can call largest with 34 and 56. So both of these numbers would be stored in our list when it gets passed. I can do largest with 3 different arguments that get passed to the parameter list. I can do one with 4 arguments. I can put in however many numbers I want in as arguments, and they get passed to the parameter list. Now, when using the variable length parameter list, there are some rules that we have to follow. So the first rule is that a method can have both a variable length parameter list and other parameters. So for example, this is allowed, where I can have several parameters and then I can include the parameter list. The second rule is that a method can have at most one variable length parameter. So I'm not allowed to have 2 variable length parameters. I can only have one, and that would contain any number of additional parameters that I want. And then the third rule is if we do include both a variable length parameter and other parameters, then our variable length parameter list must be the last parameter. Okay, I'm going to circle this. I'm going to star it. It has to be the last parameter of the list. And that way, when we call stuff, Java recognizes that the first however many parameters or arguments correspond with the first specific parameters of our method, and then anything afterwards would all get stored to our parameter list. If we did not follow this ordering, then Java wouldn't know which arguments go to which parameters.